Hello folks, and welcome to COVID Cam again. And today it's a very special COVID Cam because I'm joined by a very special guest on the Zoom, as us interweb people say. And today's guest is friend of the blog and friend of the YouTube channel, star of the Mighty Little Leagues, the creator, star and all other things, Mighty Little Puppet Show. Finally sort of half got it out. Mr. Robert Lloyd Yolland.
Lloyd Yolland, that's right. Welcome to my humble abode. Thank you for joining me here, and thank you for allowing me to join you as well.
And likewise, unless you're talking to them, which is fine too. How are you, Mr. Sir Rob?
Very, very good. I'm in a very, very fortunate position where my backup career, which has now become my main career, can be done from home. So, and my wife's work has translated to these confined settings. So the two of us have been incredibly fortunate to carry on with our work just within the confines of our home. And we're looking after each other as best we can. We have time apart within the house. While I'm at one side of the room house, she's on the other side of the house working, and I'm working. So we're finding the balance quite good at the moment to survive this horrible time.
Well, that's what you say, but I'm only seeing one of you, so
Trust me.
So Rob is a teacher, and he's performing artist, writer, director, star, dare I say? Or is that going too far?
Oh, you dare. Oh, you do dare.
I do dare. You know, Rob's been featured on this channel before. We put a little video about the Mighty Little Puppet Show.
It was a wonderful little video. Thank you so much for giving us a chance to talk through the process. And that was just before our premiere season back in 2015. So, 16.
Still on the channel if you'd like to check it out.
Please do.
And hopefully, you know, the Mighty Little Leagues will be back again soon. So I'd like to talk about basically your two jobs and the effect on them and the industries. At least here in Australia, since we've been in lockdown. And I really couldn't tell you when we started lockdown, but it feels like about 7 or 8 weeks now, I think.
We've spent the entire month of April in lockdown, and some people started getting in lockdown at the end of March. So I started lockdown a couple of days early at the end of term 1. So that was like the end of March, whereas Caitlin started a week and a half, 2 weeks before that, because the university saw the writing on the wall and just went, let's do everything online. So yeah, it's been about 6 or 7 weeks for me, and about 8 or 9 weeks for Caitlin.
And as far as work goes, I'm not in lockdown because providing services to people with disability is not something that you can do over Zoom.
You are the quintessential representation, and I don't care about ScoMo's, you know, trying to pander to the politics by going every job is essential. You, sir, are the definitive definition of what an essential worker is. You are crucially needed, and you're providing a service that cannot be done in any other way, shape or form. So I tip my proverbial hat and other parts of my body to you.
I was hoping that they'd have robots by now. So it's there you go.
Well, we're all pissed off that we don't have robots or flying cars by now. Back to the Future 2 has lied to us.
That's a very sad truth that you are reporting there. So let's talk a bit about teaching and how it's gone down in Australia, because in some ways, and this is mostly for people who aren't from Australia, but you know, in most ways, Victoria has gone a bit differently from the other states. I think that our state premier, Dan Andrews, has, in my personal opinion, gone the more sensible route of not wanting to rush back, getting teachers and kids out of classrooms quicker. Whereas, you know, the rest of Australia, especially what the federal government and the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, the route that he's been going is basically You can't get coronavirus in schools. It's just not possible. So any thoughts?
Yeah, look, it's been interesting. I mean, Victoria had a bit of a head start because our school term started a week earlier, so we don't fall in sync with Queensland and New South Wales and some of the other states. So our final week of term was the second last week of every other state and territory, pretty much. So Dan Andrews took the initiative and just went, look, let's come back on the Monday and then we'll start the holidays 4 days early to begin preparation and planning for online learning. And so the message has been quite clear from the federal level about how safe it is all from the medical experts that they see. However, from a basic school level, and I'm in a sort of like a public school in the outer eastern suburbs, there was no shift in change of providing the necessary protections for the staff and students staying there. So whereas other essential workers were being provided with hand sanitizer and their spaces being cleaned regularly, which was starting to happen even in March in a small scale, none of that was provided at any of the public schools or that I was aware of. So we were expected to do the exact same thing as essential workers without that backup and support of cleaning the spaces and all that type of stuff. And us in school environments being expected to keep social distancing is impossible. Not virtually impossible, or it makes things difficult. It's impossible. So the main thing is that there was a discrepancy between federal and state governments that seem to be falling now more in party lines, whereas federal mandate has stayed the same, whereas the state, who are of the same political party, are kind of kowtowing to their federal masters, whereas Dan Andrews is standing strong as with his political party and also his views to be safe than sorry. And with recent spike in cases, especially with the abattoirs in Victoria, it's up to about 50 cases there, and there's been an outbreak at a local Macca's. So it's the spiking is still happening, and it hasn't really been fully identified. But the main problem has been this has been something that we couldn't expect or prepare for. However, some schools have been more prepared and willing to embrace what was going to come more than others. So some schools have been completely prepared, have been ready, and have already practiced and experimented with online units or online programs to slip into if need be. Whereas other schools have really struggled and have really just waited to be told what to do and then left it for staff to figure out themselves. And so that has caused a lot of frustration within the teaching community, and a lot of us have been left to our own devices and trying to figure it out ourselves. And some of us have adapted well to that, and others have really struggled, and we've had to look after ourselves. And so a lot of the principals have been taking advantage of this, going, oh, aren't our staff great? Aren't our staff doing an amazing job? How innovative and creative there are. When we were left no other option, we've had to learn how to do this on our own because nobody really knew what to do. Whereas other schools have had that ability to start planning and were really getting behind it at the end of last term. Whereas many schools just went, let's see what happens. And they've figured it out as they've gone along. Now, after about 4 or 5 weeks, most schools have figured out their format or figured out a structure, and everyone's falling into line. But it could have been handled a bit better, and it could have been a bit more of taking the initiative. But coulda, shoulda, woulda. It's what we do, and we have to face the wrath of people saying we should just go into the classroom and stop whinging and complaining because we're not as essential as other workers, and other people going, no, they should be back in, and students' education is substantially worse off if they're online, which does not acknowledge the work of the teachers no matter what. And considering what we're doing right now, online teaching in many variations has been done for decades with School of the Air and distance education. And there have been multiple people, thousands of people who've done that for decades. Teachers have done incredible jobs in this style for decades, and nobody seems to be acknowledging that. Everyone goes, oh no, it's the worst way to teach. Oh, students are being at a disadvantage. And that's completely cutting out the fact that the teachers are there working their asses off, as they do every other job, the majority of them, to get the message out, and they have to face the challenges and still help those kids along. And we're doing that. So anyone who says, face-to-face teaching is better, it's got nothing, it's all about who's actually teaching them, whether you're face-to-face or on a video conference. So anyone who says that, whether you be the federal minister of education, he should really, pull his head out of his ass, or her ass.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. I think a sort of disability, compared to other aged care and general healthcare, has also been a little left behind, and we already it's the individual houses which have between maybe 4 and 10 people, where I work or where others work, and there's hundreds across the state. If I don't know what the actual numbers are, but in our case, especially one of the houses I work in, we've been left to. We always used PPE. And we always had to source it ourselves. So that didn't change when suddenly you couldn't get any PPE because, we'd ring up for gloves. No, we can't do gloves, sorry. And then, people had to run around and spend, the job just became ringing around to different companies until we found someone that had large size latex gloves, because we're not technically supposed to work without them, coronavirus or no coronavirus.
Yeah, exactly.
And as for hand sanitizer, forget that. That just disappeared completely off. You couldn't find that for love nor money for a while. So
yeah, exactly. And that's we as sci-fi fans and aficionados,
don't know what you're talking about, Rob.
We've seen many a TV show or a TV series or a movie event forecasting how things will be in the future with the apocalypse or whatever like that. None of us, I don't know of any writer or any filmmaker who has ever actually accurately predicted what has happened. And we have shown the world that when push comes to shove, what do we go for? Toilet paper. That is the turning point, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, it's the most crucial thing you need. That's our one thing that we hold on to that separates us from, the animals, is that ability to...
Well, think of the history of humanity. There has never been a time without toilet paper.
Yeah, never. So that was a key moment. It's not petrol, so Mad Max has gone the way of the dodo, or artificial intelligence taking over. Sorry, Terminator, all that type of stuff. No, it's the lengths we will go to make sure that we can maintain a civilized process in the toilet.
And ironically, right now, supermarkets have 2 or 3 sections for toilet paper because they couldn't sell it, and we all know why they couldn't sell it. Everybody had 50,000 rolls at home.
Exactly. But I'm still trying to have to get myself out of that process of, when I go to the shops or something like that, I have to stop myself from every time I would go to the shops. I just go, well, if I see toilet paper, I'll get it. So I'm at that point now where I'm going. I still go and I look and go, no, I don't need it, and I don't need to.
But when the second wave comes. Will the toilet paper disappear again?
Of course it will. That's the thing. That's what is going to throw our society in turmoil. It's not going to be because the lights go out. It's not going to be because the petrol runs out, or because the computers think for themselves. It's when we lose toilet paper. That's when that's where we turn on each other.
Anyway, rewinding back to what we were talking about before, which was teaching. How are you personally finding running an online classroom, and what's that process like for you?
Look, for me personally, we weren't. I wasn't given a clear mandate or a clear procedure. The Department of Education of Victoria came out with a very clear set of guidelines about the amount of time students should be in front of the computer and all that type of stuff. But just the methods of how we connect with the students. We were told what not to do, So Zoom was out of the picture because of privacy issues, and we were given the options of either Google Meets or WebEx. Now, the reason why WebEx was used, it's a government-endorsed site for video communication and stuff like video conferencing, is because there are no issues of privacy. Like there's massive issues of privacy with Zoom, and anyone can join and all this type of stuff, and recording and all that type of stuff. Whereas with WebEx, there aren't those issues because it's a shit system and it's hard to use and it's horrible. And so I was going to use that as my way of communicating with the kids. So on the day before we started, I was hoping for a clear vision from the department, and we weren't really given one. So I spent about 40 minutes with my wife trying to figure out WebEx, and it didn't work. So then the night before I started classes, I spent 2 hours on Google, and there's a format there called Google Classrooms, where you can basically set up your class, on a page of itself, and you can leave the work there. You can have a Google Hangouts, you can have a Google Meets as well, and you have a home base where all the kids can go for all the work to communicate, and then they can springboard into emails and conferences if you want. So I spent 2 hours the night before my first day back creating 8 Google Classrooms, and not only creating the format where to put the education information and the classwork, but also creating a format of how we interact and rules and instructions, how we behave in this type of thing, because kids need that structure. So it took me 2 hours, but and a lot of work in those first 3 days back to really consolidate my system, and now it works perfectly well. I'm just working on the structure that we have. So just that process of, I don't want any kids on the Google Meets video conferencing before I am, because I want to be sure that I'm supervising them. Even though it's a online learning system, it's still a school-based thing. So I want to be sure that all kids are supervised. I can't conference with kids less than 4 kids at a time. They have to be more than 4 kids at a time, for privacy issues, and just to look after the kids and myself. So those things I've learned, but I've been taught by people within my performing arts cohort, and we're a big school where I'm from, and so we've divided out into our smaller little domains, as we call them, and we've kind of been left to our own devices, and we've really protected each other and helped each other out. So I'm kind of on top of it, and I've kind of enjoyed this way of finding new ways of teaching drama, especially in this new format, and I found some fun ways to do it in a basic way, because a lot of issues from a lot of schools are our school is structuring it as if it's a regular timetable day. So we follow our 4-period timetable, and through the course of that, we found out it's just too much time in front of the screens for the teachers and the students. So we're loosening up how much time they actually need to be within the 75-minute lessons. So it's a trial and error process, but I'm being quite happy with how I've adapted, and how we as drama teachers and performing arts teachers have adapted to this format. It's been quite a fun way to explore our subject.
What sort of class sizes have you had?
They started out it's fluctuated. It started quite small, like about half. Half my kids were showing up, and now I'm getting pretty much all my kids. There's the odd straggler, 2 or 3 who aren't showing up or haven't been contacted or haven't been able to be contacted. They're just not replying to emails or phone calls.
So what is your, like, an average class size then a year?
So average class size for me, so for my year 9s, I've got about like 22 kids, and I'm getting about 18 to 19 showing up each lesson, which is good, making contact and actually asking me questions. My junior classes are about 15, and I'm getting about, for my year 7s, they're all showing up. The year 7s are really doing very well, and the year 8s are doing pretty well okay. So yeah, I'm getting about 80 to 90% of students, and
that's pretty good.
Which is pretty good. And out where we are as well, we have a high, our demographic is mostly first or second generation Australians or immigrants, or refugees who've been processed and brought through. So we have a lot of parents who don't speak English, and that they've been quite confused, and their children speak better English than the parents do. So they are often translators for going to get their license or going to the doctors or all those type of menial tasks. The kids have a lot of extra responsibilities. So balancing that with also their classwork has been a challenge for them, even when we're not in lockdown. So all those extra responsibilities for not only taking care of themselves, but their family has been an added pressure for them. So we've had to adjust accordingly to make sure they don't, feel overstressed or overworked.
Sure. And of course, you're teaching drama, and a lot of maybe some of the students you are teaching may look in the future to go into the performing arts. The government's put a lot of stimulus in here and there for many different people, but one industry that it's like the government doesn't even know it's there is
Look,
the performing arts.
Scotty from marketing loves that good talk. He loves to have a good chat. He loves to have a good ramble. He likes to go off on tangents and talk about many things, but he is not surprisingly very silent and very mute when it comes to those in the arts sector. He has been completely silent, ignorant, and it's really offensive and quite horrible how little has been said in a federal level about the arts sector and those the festival culture, those people surviving from gig to gig, the gig culture. And it's been tough. I studied as an actor. I moved to Melbourne to pursue, a full-time professional career. After 3 years of, struggling and surviving and being on the dole for about a year, I moved into teaching to, keep myself some sort of stability, using that as my backup. And as, I've been thinking back and forth about when do I finally step out of teaching and make performing my main goal. Especially within the last year or so, I've been looking at ways of stepping out eventually of full-time teaching. But with this whole crisis coming along, I'm very thankful that I have this job that has been able to survive, because I would be screwed like so many other of my contemporaries and people who I work incredibly hard with. People of all different levels of success are really hurt now, especially with just the tail end of the summer season here in Australia is a big part of, is our festival season. We started in Perth and then moved to Adelaide, and then there's Comedy Festival in March, April, and then we go down to Sydney and with Comedy Festival there. So it's a big chunk of about 3 or 4 months of full-time work for people who, not just performers but also tech crew and all that type of stuff, who move from festival to festival, who are now stranded, looking for support. There's been some great developments within Victoria, where Dan Andrews and the government have announced some packages and support network for artists and for independent companies to apply for some relief packages. So whether you are an independent company or you're an independent artist, you can apply for it. So that's coming out now, which is incredibly needed, and a wonderful idea to acknowledge the hard work of the arts sector and how important it is to our society. A lot of people have been saying, during the bushfires, during major crises and events, society turns to our artists to give up their time and effort and their talent to help out with fundraisers and stuff like that. But now in this time of crisis where, these performers need your help, or these artists, or these tech people, behind the scenes people, would help out with a drop of the hat to help raise money for other things like that. They're now not being supported. So it's been very eye-opening, and it's been, I'm just keeping in touch with so many of friends and people who I work with who are really struggling at this time, and trying to navigate the job seeker system and how they can find some way to get through. And it's not very helpful. And there's been recent revelations that not as many, about 1 million people aren't eligible for the job seeker system or the job keeper program that was set up, and so there's more people who can't get access to that money than what ScoMo and Frydenberg were hoping. So yeah, it's tough out there, and it's going to be incredibly hard to motivate that back, because whether it's an outdoor venue or whether it's an indoor venue, and a lot of venues for middle or lower level performers are not big spaces, are small, tiny spaces where social distancing is incredibly hard, and the less people you can have in a space means less tickets you're selling and less money you can make to pay the rent and pay the bills and pay pay yourself.
And at the moment, basically, there are no shows on anywhere anyway until we
No,
move off stage 3. And I think, when you think of the performing arts industry, the impact on that not even basically existing at the moment. There's nothing in production.
TV shows, movies have all just stopped, and even TV shows and movies have been thinking when they do come back, they'll have to, like Neighbours is going back to filming very soon, and there'll be no scenes with hugging or kissing. There'll be only a certain number of extras on set, only a certain number of crew, and that's going to affect not just Neighbours, which is low level television. That's going to get to the high echelons of TV and film as well. People are moving online so that because we're a very resourceful and innovative lot, obviously, people in the arts. So online concerts and selling tickets through links. There's been quite publicized. Certain comedy production companies have been mounting video conferencing performances of shows, and finding out the technicalities of how that works. So everyone's on mute, and using the whole Auslan version of round of applause to show your appreciation. It's how we adapt. Concerts and online concerts from people all around the world to not only raise money for the performers, but for healthcare as well, and for the World Health Organization. We adapt, but we're getting, we're always struggling to get, amounts of money and large amounts of money to support ourselves, but it's even harder now to find those networks and for people to, go, there's multiple options for you to do. It's the same thing as always. Don't go for the big, don't always go for the big names who are doing big stuff who are quite easy to find. Remember, support those independent people who are struggling. That friend of yours who does a show occasionally, and how you can support them as well. You can no longer use the excuse of, oh yeah, I'll come to your show. We go, well, you're at home. We're all at home. Just click on the link and pay your $5 and see us now.
So Rob, what has it meant for you in terms of your plans for 2020? Because I think, would I be right in saying we're in May now, and you would have had to cancel a number of shows already?
Yeah, Comedy Festival was going to be 3 big shows. I was going to be doing the Puppets. We're going to do their first adults only show for Comedy Festival, which we did about 2 years ago at the Butterfly Club for a one-off season. Lloyd was going to do a follow-up to our show Dracula from last year. So Mr. David Innes, myself, and Jen Spears, we're going to do a follow-up for that. Caitlin and I were also performing with improvised Harry Potter. And that's just gone. So we've had to reschedule Mina Harker. We were at the Butterfly Club, and we've rescheduled for later in the year, but whether those restrictions are lifted by then, we'll wait and see. The Puppets were meant to be performing at the Melbourne Puppetry Festival in a couple of weeks, but that's been pushed to later in the year as well, at the spot where Melbourne Fringe would normally be, and now Melbourne Fringe has moved back to now November. So it's a case of these things are being set up so that these independent companies and independent theatre groups can work towards a goal of booking acts and booking in people so that they can survive after this. But it takes out a whole chunk. So I've been primarily having teaching as my main focus, which has always been my way of paying the rent and paying the bills and allowing me to do individual shows. But my April was always booked out for 20 years. Every April I'd be teaching during the day and performing 3 or 4 shows at the Comedy Festival. And that's, and so many people invest all their time and money and have worked on shows for like 2 years or a year and a half, have been working towards this moment to put the show on and start the momentum of maybe taking that show on tour to Edinburgh, to the fringe circuit in Canada. So just the ripple effect of what that shuts down for everybody. And now we go, how do we start again? Because it doesn't look like we'll have international travel for at least another 18 months or 2 years, depending on when a cure comes, a vaccine comes. So it's tough. So I've shifted to finding ways to do my creative thing online. So we've got back into regular recording my podcast, Nerd Out. I'm appearing with the Big Hoo Ha for their first online performance on Saturday. They're doing a radio play. So we'll record that in the afternoon and then we'll put it up online in the evening. So that's a good way just to keep my juices flowing. Every Tuesday I've been doing Hoo Ha rehearsals to improvise and stuff. We're starting to think about doing some puppet stuff. So dropping around a puppet, one of the readers to a couple of the performers, like leaving them out of the front door and filming some video conferences with some puppets could be quite good, doing some shows like that. It's just a case of I've been getting myself settled into teaching online and I'm kind of on top of that now. So now I can start going, okay, I've got the momentum during the day. Now what can I do in the evenings instead of just sitting around and binge watching stuff, which has been great fun. I've caught up on the goodies. I've caught up on, Clone Wars Season 7. I've discovered Middle Edition Swartz, which is an incredible improvised special show, the two-hander comedy long-form improv on Netflix. It's just incredible. So for someone who started in improv, much like, you and I did improv together back in the day, and I've seen 20 years of improv companies and improvisers trying to get improvisation onto TV that isn't Whose Line Is It Anyway, or Thank God You're Here, to see, two performers who've become quite successful at a middle level, like Ben Schwartz has been quite successful through Parks and Rec and voiceover work, and Middleditch is his biggest claim to fame is Silicon Valley, but they've got quite a ground level following through their duo work as an improv show. So for that to get 3 specials on Netflix is a remarkable achievement, because the big companies of American Improvisation, IO, Second City, Upright Citizens Brigade have been trying for years to get regular improvisation other than Whose Line Is It Anyway on television, haven't been able to do it. So this shows a new innovative way of, maybe it's not the big companies, it's the individual performers, which could be quite exciting to see once we get back into performing, or how we adapt to this online format.
Rob, thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for the time.
Before you go, though, I did want to ask you just to let people know where they can follow you, and if we're talking about the Big Hoo Ha and other projects that might appear on the web in the next few weeks to months. What is the best way that people can follow you so that they don't miss these things?
Best way to find me on the social medias. So if you want to find me on Twitter, it's at Future Robbie, and that's the same for Instagram at Future Robbie, BBY. On the Facebook, you can find my professional page, Rob Lloyd Actor, and everything's on my website, robloyd.com.au.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Take care. Look after yourself. And as I like to say, don't forget to hit subscribe, like the video. May the journey never end.